Welcome back to the official Atari Games podcast. This is Jason here, and this is going to be a fun one. I'm joined by two special guests. We have Jim Trickster Leonard, who is one of the co-founders of MobyGames. Welcome to the pod, Jim.
It's great to be here.
Also, we're joined by Tracy Poff, one of the current developers on MobyGames. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we basically have the bookends of MobyGames past and its very work in progress, present and future. So this is quite exciting. We're gonna talk a lot about MobyGames. I've been a huge fan of MobyGames since I've discovered its existence many years ago, well before my tenure at Atari. So I'm a fan. I'm excited to get into it and explore all the things that happened in the past and where things are going in the future behind the scenes, because that is, I don't touch MobyGames on a day-to-day basis or on a month-to-month or ever. I only touch it to look up silly fun facts for the trivia that I do on these podcasts. So that's as far as it goes. But before we get into that, and that's all we're going to get into today, first, some housekeeping. I don't have much. Let's be real. First, the usual, review the podcast. That would be nice. iTunes, say nice things, preferably. And if you say mean things, still give us 5 stars and then say mean things. Join the Atari Club on Discord. That link's below. And as for things to plug, games to wishlist, all those things, we'll keep it light. But stay tuned for many things, because I just planned out, well, this is probably the closest I've come to recording something before I've posted it. I have actually planned the next multiple months of content ahead. And this will probably be the last interview style podcast for a while. Wink, wink for the audio listeners and video listeners, because I did not wink. Not once, not twice. I did not wink at all. But I did write wink, wink, so I said it. Anyway, enough about all that. Let's not keep these gentlemen waiting. It's also late. It's East Coast time. It is 7:30. And I think, is Chicago? Jim, Chicago's also on EST, right? That's Eastern time?
Nope. 6:30 here.
Central time. Look at you. Early in the day. I'll tell you what, future's looking a little darker than it is an hour in the past. All right. Speaking of the past, Jim, I want to start with you. Let's start from the beginning. Okay? Because we're going to talk about MobyGames. We got a lot of time. We have all the time we want to get into it. Covering how many years? Tell us how many years we're going to be covering. Tell me about when and how MobyGames became a thing.
Jeez. More than 25 years ago. Well, if you want the absolute germ, the absolute start of MobyGames, it actually has slightly nefarious origins, not MobyGames itself, but the idea that led to it.
Okay.
In the mid 1990s, I was part of the burgeoning abandonware movement or abandonware scene. This is a term given to software rather, who by people who would like it to be a legal concept, but it is not. It is essentially the concept of distributing old software that is not normally available. It's software piracy. Let's not mince words. And but at the time, it was a very specific type of software piracy. It was trying to preserve and distribute games that were no longer available because they represented a cultural touchstone or the history of the industry or something along those lines. And this group in the mid-90s was unhappy with the fact that they weren't available. So they distributed software illegally under the term abandonware. And my involvement in that group was creating one of the first websites with a search engine. And then later I thought it's important to preserve the history of these items and not just their digital bits. So I created so on my particular website, I had description of the game, the developer, the publisher, the people who wrote it, a scan of the box cover, a scan of the disc, some screenshots. And if this is starting to sound familiar, it's because it was essentially I didn't know it at the time, a proto MobyGames. I took that site down in 1997, but in 1998, the idea just never really left me. And I wanted to stand up something again, this time completely above board and legal. And so I had the idea to develop this. I mean, the only model at that time, I was inspired partially by IMDb, the Internet Movie Database.
I've heard of
And
it.
I thought, why isn't there something like this for games?
Yeah.
And in fact, the germ of the idea came up because there were a couple of games I was playing where I really enjoyed the music or the art, but there were no credits. And so I'm like, who did this? And where can I find more info about them? So I started designing a database and sketching out a website. And I called my friend Brian Hurt, who's the co-founder of MobyGames since day one. And he's a friend from high school. So we'd known each other at least 10 years by that point. And I called him up just to ask him some some Perl questions. Perl is how long ago this was, and some database questions. And he asked me what for, and I explained over the phone that this idea I had, like there should be a database for this, and it should be all cross-linked, and we should be able to look up stuff and follow links from one game to the other, and it's for discovery and for the documentation of this industry and blah blah blah. And I think I rambled for 45 minutes straight, and he wasn't saying anything, but he was taking it all in. And about 2 or 3 days later, he called me back and he said, "Go to this IP." And I went to the IP in a browser. This is mid 1998, and it was a mock up of everything I had described, including if you go back to archive.org and you look at the very first year of MobyGames, you'll see on the side there's specific links to sections. Again, this was slightly modeled after IMDb. You had the game sheet, which is the first page you land on for a particular game. Essentially, it was almost completely fully fleshed out, and it was functional. And he had populated the first two games, and he was calling to show me what not only what he had done, but hey, why don't you add some more, and we'll kick this down the road and see what how it goes. This was the internet bubble was still growing at this time, and this was the beginning of the mad rush to getting stuff online and making money with it. And we thought, this is it. We're gonna do this, and this will be our full-time job, and we're gonna make money from, at the time, at internet advertising. That was all you could really do in the late 90s. And sure enough, we did, and we worked on it for several months. And finally, I made some announcement in Usenet in February. I think it was February of '99, and we brought it online. And it was running out of an ISDN line in Brian's apartment. So the first year or so of MobyGames was limited to 128 kbit per second, and it was very well received. And it was going very well we were very much a startup in startup mode. We both had day jobs, but we were spending all of our spare time at night, trying to grow it. I said before Brian added the first two entries, I have a software collection, so I added the next 200. And the initial goal was to keep it limited to one platform, because for the first year or so that we could leverage our subject matter. We considered ourselves subject matter experts in the PC. We both grew up with them, and that was where we had all our software and so on. And for the first 2 years, it was just go, go, go. And then a couple of things happened. I had to pull back a little bit due to family obligations. And also, unfortunately, the internet bubble popped around that time, and the bottom completely fell out of internet advertising. So you couldn't really earn a living on just having one or two ads. You had to, what we now know is completely monetizing the platform, and
Yeah.
you know that much better than I. So I'm not
Well,
going to go
the
into that.
question, I guess the interesting thing about that is, the ads seem to dry up. Did the traffic dry up? Did the traffic remain consistent at
No,
that point?
the traffic didn't dry up, but the the CPM for the ads plummeted, just absolutely plummeted. We were getting, I mean, right when we started, it was something like $2,000 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for a side income at the time in 2000, it was enough. It paid for the site and left additional profit. And that was, up until that point, that's what we were going to do. Past that, I made the decision to drop back a little bit and not spend every waking moment on MobyGames. We attracted a third person who was going to act as a business manager, And that's also when we opened it up to multiple platforms, which is also when we added an easy way for outside people, not just us, not just administrators, to add more information into the database. And that's the start of the MobyGames community. And as you can see now, it's crazy thriving. And there's 200. Tracy will know this better than me. 300 platforms now. I think it's crazy how many there are.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is, yeah. It's
so Tracy, jump in, clarify that. Give us a real sense of scale as someone on the inside.
Yeah,
it's too much. That's what it is. We have 332 platforms today.
Yes.
Damn. Wow. And that makes and that's only grow. I mean, it's the amount of content that comes out now is almost baffling. Like you're talking probably 100 games a day if you include mobile, Steam at least, right? Like depending on the day, you could have maybe even more than that because it's the wild, wild west, right? It's not like you have to be published to just show up in a platform, especially if it's on mobile or Steam or even itch.io. Those games could show up too. So keeping track of all that stuff, obviously there's a lot going on in the community that's doing a lot of the work that you would basically have to do, that you were just putting in on your own. So I kind of want to take a brief sidebar here and get a little up to stuff on what Tracy has done, his history on this site real quick, because Tracy, when we were first introduced via email, you were saying you've been a contributor for 20 years, you said?
Yeah, I first joined the site back in 2006, and it's been a long time.
So get into that. What pulled you in? What introduced you to that opportunity to start doing it? What drove you to start being a contributor and continue to do so? Is it because you needed to do something with all that stuff behind you?
No, I tried to think, how did I first encounter MobyGames? I'm sure it must have been a search result. It came up somewhere and I found it, and it turned out to be useful. And so I came back, and at some point I made an account in 2006, and I think the reason I stayed was, this was a place on the internet where you could go and you could have a conversation about, is this weird edutainment title really a game? Is this, does that count? You hardly interact with this thing at all, but it shows up on your screen in pretty colors. What makes something a game? We could talk about all these issues around, what games really are and what they're really doing. And I didn't know anywhere else on the internet you could really have discussions like that with people around the world. And so, I just kept coming back.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, well, that's awesome. And
it definitely takes a certain type of aficionado to dispute the minutia of this industry and these games. But yeah,
quick.
I totally get it.
Quick follow up on that. How many Wikipedia pages have you edited in your lifetime?
I think a couple of thousand of those too.
Holy hell! I knew it.
Before I joined MobyGames, I mean, back I was in middle school in the '90s, and I was an editor on the Open Directory project, which was a search engine where people would submit links and you would categorize them and describe them and all this stuff. And then I joined Wikipedia, and I worked on articles like largely stuff about math and things like that because I was a math student in university. And so I've always been interested in this kind of project where people come together to, document history and things. So MobyGames is just like perfect combination of all these different interests.
It scratches an itch. You have an addiction to recording, to data entry.
Yes, I just love typing.
Yeah, I'll bet. It sounds awesome. Man, you got to see the evolution of CMS. How exciting. So that is content management system to those who are unaware. So Jim, the bubble has burst. What happened next?
Well, things puttered along in a the MobyGames incorporated around that time. I think it was around 2004. It was the three of us, and then also a fourth person, Rob, who was, in fact, I guess you would call him a community manager today. And he was also a lead approver. Tracy may remember the name Rob. And we tried to grow the business. And one of the things that we tried to do when the internet advertising revenue dried up, was create a sort of a professional service, because we actually had inquiries from Gama Sutra, if you remember that magazine and that company. We had inquiries because we had all of the credits for all of these people who made the games, and then also sections where you could also see which group of people worked on which games and what other games they did and so on. We tried to create a professional service in response to queries from companies, such that MobyGames could offer a professional service that would generate some income. The professional service being something that a recruiter might use. Find a game that did really well and earned the company a lot of money, see who worked on that game, see what other games they worked on, and then come up with a list of candidates and so on. And we tried to pursue that. We also tried to grow the number of contributors contributing into MobyGames by showing up at various conferences. I was at Midwest Gaming Classic 2004, the Classic Gaming Expo 2004 and 5. We were at GDC 2007. Got to shake Shigeru Miyamoto's hand. That was cool.
Nice.
And I had
you
the flu.
You haven't washed that hand since.
Well, I'll bet he wished I had, because I had the flu at the time and 103 fever, but nothing was going to stop me from being that close to Miyamoto. So I did it. I hope he didn't get sick. I'm sorry if he did. And we just tried to grow our presence there. Interestingly, at GDC 2007, someone came up to us and said, why are we there? And they were like utterly confused. And I started into my spiel, like, well, we're an online database and we want, the community to contribute because, it grows the value for everybody, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason he asked, why are you here, isn't because he didn't understand. It's because he was a developer and he's like, we all know you. We already know what you do and we love it. You don't need to promote here. And it was flattering, actually. I was really happy to hear that. Let me back up 1 year to 2006.
Yeah.
In 2000, although I helped out at GDC 2007, in 2006, I actually pulled back quite a bit from my involvement in MobyGames. And it's an interesting lesson, I think, for anyone who is involved in communities. One of the overarching design goals I had for MobyGames was also to define a certain type of taxonomy for classifying games. And you can see this in how games are entered. There's like a top-level genre that you can pick, and there's supposed to be very few of them. I'll get into that. And then there's secondary genres and things like that. And I was trying to define like a genus and a phylum or whatever for classifying games. And the reason I wanted to do that is because if you could classify a game by its base elements, such as, let's take Ultima, it is an adventure, it is an RPG, it is a top-down medieval fantasy, turn-based. If you could classify games by those elements, you can then use those elements to find other games like it, or track those kinds of games through history, or for whatever. It was my vision for a really great tool for deep research. But in 2006, the community really wanted RPG to be a top-level genre, and that did not fit in with my personal vision. And so, because the argument I made at the time was that all RPGs are adventures. Not all adventures are RPGs. And so RPG itself should not be a top genre. And I learned a valuable lesson in that sometimes community projects can run away from you. I had to make a decision of, do I stick to my guns, argue with the community, and alienate some or many of them, which is just going to hurt MobyGames down the road? Or do I give up my idea and let the community thrive and continue? And so I chose the latter, of course. And that was sort of a wake-up call for me. It's not that I hated MobyGames or anything like that. It was just that I felt like it wasn't as important for me to hold on to that as tightly. And it was also slightly reassuring, even though the community disagreed with me, in that there were so many of them that I kind of knew MobyGames could now really kind of become self-sustaining as long as we kept the company alive and kept the service going. So I pulled back, spend more time with my family, work on my career. And then I pretty much didn't have too much to do with MobyGames until we sold it to GameFly in 2010. And that is unfortunately where my day-to-day involvement with MobyGames ended. But that is where Tracy's began. So,
but what's interesting about that? Well, actually, yeah. All right, let's pivot there.
You can unpack some of that if you want.
I do want to go back to it, but I want to
Sure.
give Tracy a chance to jump in here. So, yeah, what is that? Is that where your time began? I guess, Tracy. Like, how long have you been on the back end of MobyGames?
Well, I became an approver on MobyGames in January of 2011, so it was right around that time. Which, followed a few years of probably being very annoying, asking this specific detail, is this really the right way to do it? Being very careful with things. So I guess that made me a prime candidate. And the GameFly thing. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so can you go into that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot more people that are users, that are front-end users of MobyGames and will research things and look into how things work and look into the facts of the matter as they're listed on MobyGames versus anybody who's doing data entry on the back end. Not everybody has your same addiction. So what is the process of data entry in MobyGames? How does something show up on the site, and how do we know it's true?
So everything you see on MobyGames was contributed by some user. We don't automatically gather the data and just put it up there. Everything was triggered by a user or uploaded directly if it's an image, or typed in by the user, somebody, which could be anyone on the internet. But unlike, Wikipedia, one of our semi-contemporaries, it doesn't just appear on the site just because somebody said it was so. We have an approval process. When you submit something, it goes into a queue, and an approver looks at it very hard and decides whether it's true or not. And they'll ask you, you didn't provide us with proof of this, and send it back and say, send this back in when you've got proof. So it can be a challenge for people to live up to our standards. But, for all these years, we've worked really hard to make sure that every piece of data, as much as we can, is really correct and that we have good reason to believe that it's correct. And so being an approver means that, you have a certain regard for the truth and you're willing to spend the time, looking through these websites or looking at scans of magazines. Or I once ordered a copy of a microfilm from a library when trying to figure out when a game was released. There's a lot of research that goes into just checking all the information that people send in. So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to submit information. Obviously, there's so many games out there, nobody can do it alone.
Right.
But then we want to make sure that we check that it's right. And that's a really large job that our approvers have been working on, tirelessly for decades. And it's paid off. We have a great website because of it.
Yeah. Are there any let's call them first party sources or primary sources of this information? Are there any people at publishers or developers that will submit their own information or trusted people that like an example that comes to mind, right? Like Ubisoft games credit roll will last about 6 hours. So who's writing all those down?
Our tireless contributors. Most of those, somebody sat down, they had a recording maybe on YouTube of the credits, and they typed in every name by hand.
Oh, man.
And then somebody else looked at them and made sure that the names were right. It's a really big job. Of course, we do get people, who worked on the games coming and saying, hey, I worked on this thing. Can we, change this? Can we put my name on there? Can we do all these things? An early contributor was John Romero, and we have trivia from him about Doom. And so it's a good combination of, players who enjoyed the games and wanted to, write about them, have a place to talk about them, have a place to see them in lights, and developers with the same urge.
That's cool. So going back to this moment where GameFly wanted to buy MobyGames, or when they did buy MobyGames, why did they want to buy MobyGames? Because you were in those conversations, I assume, and I'm sure someone's confidential. But I guess what was the intent? That's what I'm curious about.
I was tangentially in those discussions. The primary reason was that Brian had gotten married a few years before and was starting a family and wanted a more stable source of income. And that's really all it came down to, I think. I'm not blaming him or anything like that. All of us voted on the sale and voted yes, obviously. It needed income for MobyGames was variable, and running a website, especially a website with the kind of traffic that MobyGames was generating in the late 2000s, was not cheap. And sometimes there wasn't quite enough to pay a modest salary for a single developer. Brian was essentially the single developer. And so that was the motivation. We inquired to several companies, and Gamefly had the most favorable response at the time. And so that's how that decision was made. I wasn't too involved in that beyond what I've already said, so I'm afraid I can't really expand on that.
Yeah, that's okay. It's just as being part of Atari when the latest and let's hope final purchase happens, right? Then the motivation, I think Wade's motivation was kind of obvious, right? Like and it kind of aligns. I mean, that was the first, I think, big purchase after Wade became CEO at Atari, and I think it kind of reinforced his idea about game preservation, right? It's not literal game preservation in that it stores a version of those games that is playable, but it codifies the games that exist and catalogs all the games. And it is the closest thing to an IMDb for games that we have. And I think it's the source if you want to get that information for games. So it kind of tracks, and, that carried on through the purchases of Night Dive, which do the same thing more in a literal sense, and then Digital Eclipse, who do things in a literal sense of that game preservation. So to understand the motives of a company that exists in like the rental space, it seemed it's that's why I asked the question. Whether or not you have the answer is,
if I say I didn't understand it then and I still don't understand it, those would be two true statements. But I'll say this: when I learned that Atari had purchased it, I was actually really happy because, and of course, I'm two sales totally removed from that, so I didn't know about it until I read it in the press. But I was really happy because, ever since Wade started doing his thing, I've been very impressed with how Atari understands the value of its portfolio of IP, not to sound too much like a business person, but there is value in older properties, and they can be adapted to new generations, and as well as appealing to the original generation who grew up with it. And I had a feeling that Atari would be a really great steward of it, and they have been. And I've been really happy to see that. One of the reasons contributing to MobyGames is so difficult is because, as Tracy already said, it's a community of people who believe in authenticity, and it was designed from the start to be the database of record for portions of this industry, and that's why for the first year and a half, Brian and I were the only ones inputting data because we had our own standards to define and meet. And then when that was presented to everybody, we wanted the whole world to see the standard that we were trying to hold this up to. So I'm very happy with where it ended up. And no, I couldn't tell you at all what a rental company was doing with it. I think it was just simply, I won't say it's the last offer we had, but it was the most appealing one at the time.
Fair enough. I guess I don't know how that fits into, if you're not in the business of video game history. It was, I mean, there's a few suitors that would even fit that mold at that point.
I think the rationale at the time was that any visitor to MobyGames would see a game and there would be an immediate link right there to rent it from Gamefly. I believe that was the motivation.
Of course. And that works under the assumption that physical games would be the primary means at which we would play games forever.
That's right.
Right? Perfect. Love it. Oh, remember the 90s? What a time. remember the early aughts. What a time. Do you ever do any, do you ever go in the back end and do some submissions of your own, Jim?
Once in a great while.
Okay.
What I found myself slowly slipping into is I don't know who added the feature. If it was Tracy, I appreciate it. As an approver, as a logged in approver, which I still am, if you visit a page that has pending items in the queue, it will show you at the top of the page. And so what I've been doing is slowly sliding into getting back into approving items there in the queue. I'll be looking up a game for a game sheet for research, and I'll see, oh, some screenshots haven't been approved, or oh, this credit needs, or whatever, and I'll immediately hit the link. As an approver, I then go into the approver interface and can immediately deal with it. So I don't contribute new entries that much, but yeah, approving, sure. I don't think I'll ever stop doing that.
That's cool.
But I will. I have stopped being the owner. So
I like that. So Tracy, what's happening now with MobyGames? What's the latest and greatest? What's exciting? What are you doing? What are we doing? What are we doing?
Well, we keep adding games at a breakneck pace, and I think, that's the fault of Steam and all those other villains you mentioned earlier.
Villains! Opportunities!
If they would stop, we would finish.
It's not them. It's not them. It's the endless creativity that developers have, and that if there's ideas out there to be made, then they will be made. Let's not talk about how we're going to credit AI slop, but so we'll just move on.
So what's going on in the present? Well, for me with MobyGames, like what I want us to do, I want us to have as much information as we can, all of the, validated information that we can anyway, not just rumors, but I want us to be able to record everything surrounding the history of these games. And that's tough. I mean, it's impossible. One site, one person, one country couldn't do it. It's too big of a task. But I want us to gather as much as we can and present it so that as many people as possible can use it. Because we are used all the time. We have, we're cited by over 1,000 academic articles. There was a book that came out earlier this year about Japanese video games that cites us extensively. We're, of great use to a lot of people. And there's so many aspects of games that we don't yet document. I mean, I've got a Lego here. It's a Karibo's shoe from Super Mario Brothers 3.
Oh, that's awesome.
Merch.
Love it.
We don't document merch. We're probably not going to document merch, but it's great, right? There are so many aspects of games. There's magazines and books and a million things. So every day I'm thinking, what is there that we're not doing yet that we should? Because if we're not here preserving it, if somebody's not here preserving it, as the time passes, it gets harder and harder. You can't, like the people who worked on it, they might not be around anymore. The games themselves, maybe they were digital and you can't get them anymore. And so it's really important for us to capture as much as we can, while we can. But that means we have to have the right data structure for it. We have to have the right way of putting it in the database where people are going to be able to find it useful, where we're going to be able to keep track of it and, know what we've got and what we haven't got. And so week to week, I'm thinking, what features can we add that are going to make us able to do this?
Well, all right. Let me put on my big dumb I'm not a programmer hat and ask you this. What is the challenge of documenting merch? You have tabs for everything else. Like you can take a picture of an ad. You could take a picture of the box art. I use that a lot for my games that I do. And it's a lot of fun. Man, it's a shame that they don't do many video game ads anymore or boxes anymore. But anyway, what is the issue with adding the merch tab to every game page, assuming there's merch for it?
So, we could do it. We document.
Hey, he's going to do it, everybody.
Right.
You heard
exactly.
it here first.
Done. We've made a decision. I'll just get everybody to agree to that. No, we could do it. If something comes in the box, you got a toy that came in the game box, we take a picture of it. We do document the things that are close to the games. But the trouble with merchandise is, I looked around. I did actually spend a little time thinking about this a few years ago when we were designing the new version of the site. Is merch something we could possibly do? And there are toy databases in the world, but they're complicated and it's hard. There's too many toys and there's too much stuff. So if I've got a Mario toy here from Lego, I could get all the Lego Mario toys and figure it out. They're a big company. You can look at all the stuff they've ever done. But there's toys that came with Happy Meals, and there's toys that came from conventions where they just made up some things and handed them out to people. And there's a million different ways. And we have a lot of expertise when it comes to all the variations in games. Like if a game came with some object, then maybe it's a soundtrack, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a toy. And we have some idea what that's like, and we know what's important to gamers with regard to these objects. They care about, what special edition of the game did it come in. We have a picture of them, so we know what they are. When it comes to games specifically, we have a whole lot more expertise, so we can track them in a lot more detail. We write down how many players they had. We write down, what online features do they have? Do they have achievements on Steam? All the things that gamers care about. But when it comes to toys, we don't have experts in toys. What do toy collectors care about? What do T-shirt collectors care about? Do you need to write down what sizes of T-shirt they offered? It's a vast domain where I have no idea where we would start with really completely documenting any of this stuff. And so, as with so many other things, if we're going to do it, I want us to do it well. And doing it well means we have to know from the get-go what kind of information are we going to be tracking. We can add more as we go. We've always been incrementally improving in MobyGames. We've added. We used to not track concept art and things like that, but a decade or so ago we added that feature so that games could have concept art, and that's great. It really fills out the whole life cycle of the game. You can see from concept art through to the finished product. It's a pretty wonderful thing. But all of these are added a little bit at a time when we know for sure that that's something we really can do, and we understand how we can document it correctly. So with toys, why don't we do it? Well, if you're a toy expert, then I welcome you to join us and figure it out.
Well, that's a great way of reinforcing the integrity of the data, right? It's not so much that from what you're saying, it's not the difficulty of adding the tab and allowing people to upload pictures. You already have that functionality. You could create that probably in a day, right? Whereas it's more about what goes on the back end and the process of validating all that stuff, and who are those experts and approvers that are making sure everything comes in or not, that it's legit. Is that safe to say?
Right.
Very cool. So Jim,
it's the double-edged sword of scope defined by your customers, right? So you add, you're not sure what to add, but if they complain loudly enough, now you do know what to add and you expand the scope.
Yeah. I always struggle with the word just. Can you just do this? If you can just do that. And I catch myself doing that a lot as a producer. It happens. Sometimes you do it and you're like, this can't possibly be that difficult. And then you realize, oh, actually, yeah, it is. And not because of the individual thing that you're asking for, but all the things around it that make it complicated, all the ripple effects as a result.
Right. It's a simple matter of programming. Just give me 10 years in a research team.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the tip of the iceberg that sank the Titanic. It's all the stuff you didn't see.
Right.
Right. It was the lack of headlights. Jim, on that point, are there any features that before your tenure, within your tenure, like when that ended, is there any features that you wanted to add to the website that you never got to, and perhaps maybe ones that are still not there? Or maybe it's stuff that made it in down the road and you're like, I always wanted to do that. Thank God that got in. I'll take any, you can go anywhere you want with this.
The biggest one was the one I mentioned earlier, which was classifying games based on some sort of real or invented at MobyGames taxonomy, and being able to do searches for that. Instead of, the game browser and the game search has come such a long way, and I have no complaints with where it is now. But it would be nice to, for example, say, I'm looking for a first-person cyberpunk shooter, that it had the involvement of Mike Pondsmith, this kind of stuff, and just kind of tag it all and then see what happens. Or more importantly, I love this game. Show me other games that match this one in terms of all of its core attributes. And I wish we had the time to do that, but unfortunately we didn't. We kept getting pulled in so many different directions. We did have the credits, thank goodness. That was added early on, and that's probably the one feature I'm probably the most proud of. And I say that as if I did it, but I didn't. I need to give really huge credit here to Brian Hurt, who coded 99.99% of the site. We did it in Perl because I knew Perl and because he had implemented sites in Perl. And I ended up, I think by the time we sold the GameFly, I had probably 10 lines of code left in the code base, and it was all Brian. So, and he also kept the site afloat during the lean years as well. So huge credit to him. Most of the features that went in were implemented by him.
That's cool. All right. Tracy, this one's mainly for you because you're in there. You're in the back end. But Jim, you could probably help answer this too. Why are there so many German ads? When you go into the the promotional section of most games, they're all like German. There's about 80% ads are in German. I want to know what's up. What's up with that?
Well, we have a lot of contributors from Germany. I looked earlier today. I looked at our all-time top 10 contributors, and they're from 7 different countries. We have absolutely global scope in our contributors, our audience, and so of course we get ads from Germany, and we get covers from the UK and Canada and Germany and Poland and everywhere. And it just takes a few people with an interest in collecting big box games or whatever and scanning them and putting them on MobyGames, and suddenly, why is MobyGames a German website? Well, it's because German people care about games.
Yeah. It's funny. It's frustrating for the games because I can't read German, and that would make them even harder. Although maybe I should throw one in there. Maybe one day I'll do the game and be like, okay, and I just start saying something in German and see if anybody gets it.
You can play a fun trivia game with all those German advertisements, compare them to their American counterparts, and see what is censored and what is not.
Oh, man. Ads back.
Yep.
That's the other interesting thing. Are there any rules currently moderating what historical ads that may be deemed, let's say, uncouth? Or is it it's like, hey, no, this is what was there, and therefore this is the thing that represents the games. Like, can you think of any controversial ads that you've seen come through or anything on the website that you're like, well, we have to do it as a means of prosperity?
None in my tenure. And I don't know what the current policy is. Tracy could speak to that. I think it came up so little that we at least in my tenure, we just included it verbatim and hoped it wouldn't cause a controversy. The idea being that this is history. This is what they put out. We are not making a judgment on it. It's just here. Now there are societal issues, pro and con for that, but I think that was at least 2006 and earlier, that was our philosophy.
Right. I agree. That is still our current policy. We record things as they are. And I think it's really important to, be faithful to that, because if you look back and you want to know what were people doing with games, oh, well, they were doing all these things that are completely okay with us today, so we didn't really need to improve. It's absurd, right? So no, we don't want to surprise people. We don't want people to, clicking around on MobyGames and suddenly they see something they didn't expect. So it's a database. We label things. We make sure people have options, but we definitely record history as it happened.
Yeah, I agree. That's the right move. But man, there's some crazy ads out there. None pop up to mind, but man, woo. I was trying to find one in particular, which is not for a game, and I don't know if this is captured there, but there was an ad for an accessory. It was for a controller, and it was in like but it was just like it was basically them giving birth to a controller, and the wire was meant to be the umbilical cord. It was messed up. I don't remember what that ad was for. It was some sort of controller, back in probably the early 2000s. Maybe you guys have seen it. Definitely a magazine ad. I don't know how things like that are cataloged. If they're cataloged on MobyGames, it might just be games, but that was a weird one. That was really weird, but left an impression. So that's worth something, I suppose.
I like how there was a time period where at one time, I guess this was part of the extreme 90s, where it seemed like everything was filmed with a fisheye lens. Yeah. So you've got these, gigantic, strange angles of everybody on the front cover of the box.
Look, I miss the variety of text treatments from the 90s. Okay. And no one's going to convince me otherwise. One of the coolest text treatments to a console of all time is the Atari Jaguar. And that is not me being a homer. I've never even played a Jaguar. All right.
Oh, I have.
What are your thoughts on the Jaguar? Give me about 5 minutes.
Good grief. I applaud the idea and I hated the execution. So much so that I think I ended up selling my entire Jaguar collection and games to a 16-year-old who was super enthusiastic for $40. Now,
nice.
Today, that would have been worth a hell of a lot more. But no, I was unfortunately quite disappointed with the Jaguar.
Well, it wasn't my fault. I wasn't there at the time.
Wasn't any of our faults.
Hard to say. Tracy, where were you at that time?
Oh, in school. Being good, yeah. Not causing trouble with the Jaguar.
All right, fair enough. So we're all clear. Jim, what's your dog's name? I saw him run around in the back.
Oh, currently we've got Daphne, who is a black British short-haired lab retriever. And I have 2 mutt cats that are of varying degrees of adorableness and frustration.
All right. No names?
Oh, sorry. Emma and Amy.
Very nice. All right. Tracy, I was hoping to title this episode The Past, Present, and Future of MobyGames. So we talked about the past. We've talked about the present. But tell me what's next. Like, what's some of the future stuff that you can tell us about MobyGames without getting in trouble?
Well, we're always working on more things. We are talking about adding, features for soundtracks and features for better scans of magazines. There's things we've discussed in the community for, literally decades now, where we're able to do these things. We got to do it slowly because, we've only got so many people, only so many hours that approvers can spend working on this stuff. But ultimately the future, we're going to do it all. We're going to have everything people want on a game database.
That's cool. That's great. Anything else people should know about MobyGames or what's happening that we didn't cover, I didn't ask about, that you're like, man, I was really hoping you'd talk about this, or I get to talk about this. So what comes to mind there? Anything? Or we still have time. There's no time limit. And surprise, I came up with a game idea.
Yes.
There you go.
I am ready.
I don't want to disappoint Jim.
One of my favorite pieces of trivia to spit out is that MobyGames is older than Wikipedia.
Oh.
So there.
Wikipedia.
In your face, Jimmy. From one
Tracy,
Jim to another.
Tracy, anything? Or are you good? We're good here.
I'm good.
All right. Right on. Well, all right. Quick game here. You brought up the internet database, the Internet Archive, right?
Both, actually. Both,
yeah, okay.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. So I went to the first instance of MobyGames October 3rd, 1999 at 1:58:56. I assume that's...
The site would have been 7 or 8 months old by then, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So I am just on the homepage, and I'm seeing a list of the 10 most published companies.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So keep in mind, this is 1999, which is Kind of crazy. So we'll go, each of you will get 3 chances to name a company that you think is on this list. And whoever has the most points at the end is the winner of this game that I absolutely put a lot of thought against. And because I have not randomized this order with 2 people, we will go alphabetical by first name, as is tradition on Douglas Movies, where I rip all these games off from. So, Jim, you get to go first. These all the, by the way, I would have listed these in order of most, but it's actually an alphabetical order. So therefore I couldn't do that. So everything will be worth 1 point. I expect a very close score at the end. I will not say if I think that's going to be high or low. Let's see where this goes. Jim, your first guess.
Most published companies. Is that what we're going for?
As you wrote it.
Oh, well, I didn't write it. If it's on the front page of MobyGames in 1999,
it's on the front page.
It was algorithmically generated.
Oh, okay. But it was as, but as Brian, if he did the programming, right? It was as he put in to label these things. So here's what it says. It says browse games by title, company, genre, or year. And then it lists in 3 columns. It says 10 most published companies. And then it lists 10 companies. And then it says the last 10 years. I don't know why that's there. I think we would all know what the last 10 years were from that time, but I guess you could click those and find that out. And then the 10 most common genres, which I'll read it. You know what? I'm going to read those just for fun now, so you can get a sense, so you could get into the mindset of 1999. Okay. We were on the brink of Y2K. This site was only going to exist for another 2 months, and then the world was going to end. So here we go. Top 10 most common genres. First person perspective. That's what it was called. That's what it says here. Third person perspective, action, adventure, arcade, platform, not platformer, shooter, simulation, strategy, and then this is fun. I hope this comes back. War game / historical. Okay. So that is actually, by saying those are the top 10 genres, that's actually a very good hint to which companies would be in this list. So now I've just given the listeners a chance, and I hope that you guys are now in the mindset. 1999. Jim, hit me. What do you got?
All right. Activision
is not. No, just one.
No, just one?
Just one at a time. We're going to go back and forth.
One at a time. All right. Well,
you're just going to get 3 guesses. So
damn,
what do you want?
I just gave away the best one. Go ahead.
Well, you haven't. Which one? What do you want to lock in? I know you said 2. I'm gonna be nice.
No.
You get a chance to lock in 1.
To be fair, my first response was Activision, so that's going to be that's the one I'm locking in.
Activision is not on this list.
Dag nabbit.
Which is kind of crazy because, well, if it's most published, they didn't really get into their surge of content. Like, I guess, like there seemed to be a little bit of a downtime in the 90s, I'd say. Like they were really busy back in the day, like in the Atari era, right? And then, man, they pumped out a lot of stuff in the 2000s.
Yes.
They were the ones who said, right, like, if the game can't be exploited on a yearly basis, like that was a Guitar Hero, Tony Hawk, every licensed movie game, all those things. A lot of those came from.
I'm letting my 80s heritage cloud my judgment, because they certainly pumped out quite a bit in the 80s and early 90s.
It's all good. All right, Tracy, what's your first guess?
Well, I think this is tough because I bet they're largely PC. Otherwise, Nintendo would be a great choice. Most published is so hard.
Yeah.
Give me Avalon Hill.
Ooh. Avalon Hill. I don't know what that is, and neither does this list. So that is not here.
I thought you heard me. I thought you were going to crib my answer.
But what is? Go on. Tell me about Avalon Hill. What is that?
Well, they published the D&D games, didn't they? Strategy games. Things.
Avalon Hill was a publisher of very many tabletop strategy games.
Okay.
War games, and they would branch out a little bit. And they actually created some of the first personal computer games because it was somewhat easy to translate their tabletop to computer. And so some of the very earliest published games you'll ever see are by Avalon Hill.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool.
I mean, we're talking like late 70s, like that early.
Love it. Good stuff. Yeah, keep in mind, it is 1999.
99.
99. But I mean, hey, if it's taking everything, then it would just be most published at this point. So who knows? All right, Jim, hit me. Guess number 2.
Electronic Arts.
Electronic Arts is on this list. That's 1 point for Jim. They were always doing stuff. I mean, 90s, that was like peak sim. That was like sim blank for everything. In addition to Madden and the sport games, they started gearing up.
They have they've always been a player since '83. They've never really faltered.
Absolutely. All right, Tracy, guess number 2.
Well, how about Maxis?
Maxis is not on this list. Were they were acquired by EA, right? Or because they weren't always a subsidiary of EA.
They were acquired by EA in, I think, 98. And they did self-publish before then, SimCity and all the other stuff, Sim Earth, Sim Ant. But when it came to the Sims, that was published by Electronic Arts, and I think they became a subsidiary at that time. I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, so the original SimCity was not EA published? It was Maxis?
Well, I could run back and grab it off my shelf, but no, actually, I believe it was distributed by Broderbund. So developed by Maxis and distributed by Broderbund.
Love this. I got to have you guys back.
You're tugging on my last synapse from 1989. So but I'm pretty sure that's right.
I love having you guys on. You have to come back. We're just going to do a bunch of obscure stuff. We're just going to pick something and then just start running with it and seeing how many obscure connections we can create from that. So Jim, this is your chance to bury Tracy in this very close game.
I don't want to bury Tracy.
You can seal the deal. You could put this man in a hole.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know why I got so aggressive. It's 8:30. What is your final guess on this list, just to show off?
I'm hoping this is the name they published the most under and not the current name, but I'm going to go with Sierra Online.
I'll give it to you. It's Sierra Online Inc.
Okay.
But who's good? But
I was worried it was going to be like Vivendi or something like that.
Yeah. No.
At that time, it still would have been Sierra Online.
No, Tracy, I'm still going to give you another guess. Okay. Because I think you could get one. You could pull one out here, and it's important, right? It's important you get one. I play hockey a lot as a hobby, and I will lose by a lot of points. There's nothing more satisfying than being down like 10-0, and then you get that one goal at the end to show that you're at least capable of doing it. So Tracy, that sounded way more mean than it should have. I apologize.
I know how this is going to go. You don't have to pretend. How about Acclaim?
No, Acclaim is not on this list, but I will say you were close, and it was actually because Jim made the comment about it for SimCity. Broderbund is on this list, so you were close with Maxis. You just picked the wrong. I guess maybe they were billed as the developer, maybe, and not the publisher.
Yeah, they were the developer.
So you probably had the right idea, which is who's pumping out the most games. The rest of this list, alphabetical, of course. Accolade, Broderbund, Electronic Arts, said that. IBM, which is interesting.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Infocom, it came up before. LucasArts is there. Oh, no, it didn't come up before. It came up. Doesn't matter why that came up. Nobody looked too into that. It's not nearly as exciting. I was talking to somebody who used to work on at LucasArts games.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Old school guy. Microprose. That's why that when I was saying the War Games thing, I thought that would have been a good hint because, man, there's some interesting ones. Actually, ones that we have republished on Steam, like what's the one with the funny name, like Decisions in the Desert. I think that's a game which is a crazy title.
It's an early one by them.
Yeah. We republished that on Steam. Sierra Online Inc., which you said Software Toolworks, the.
Yeah.
So the Software Toolworks. Who are they? You said, yeah, like who are they?
So, well, was a realization of two things. The first thing is I now know why this list is somewhat biased, and that's because by October of 99, it was still me inputting everything in my collection. So I have a drastically unfair advantage, and Tracy should have been given some par or some handicap. Second,
Tracy has a handicap.
Tell the truth. Did you arrange this in advance? Is there money on this?
I did not. No. Tracy has a handicap of 2. It's a tie.
It's a tie.
Everybody wins.
That's fantastic.
You can both share the prize, which is nothing.
Recognition. And the second thing is Software Toolworks had a very large publishing presence in the 80s and 90s. You may remember them for Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing, of which there were a ludicrous number of versions for platforms and sequels and so on. And also the original Chessmaster.
Oh, okay. That's fun.
Yeah.
And then last one on this list is Windmill Software.
Oh, and that's entirely my fault, because we made it a point to enter every single Windmill Software game because we loved them so much. They existed for 1.5 years and put out only 10 games. All 10 games are in MobyGames at that time, and that's why that list is so incredibly skewed. I am sorry.
That's so funny. I love it. I love the background of that. What was, man, did you have like a favorite Windmill Software game?
Oh, without a doubt, Digger, which some people may even remember. Digger is essentially an unauthorized clone of Mr. Do, but it produced satisfying gameplay and surprisingly articulate music on an original IBM PC, of which only had an internal speaker with no sound chip, and so it was bit banging the port in a mad race to create something that didn't just sound like a beep. And so it was fun to play because of that.
Oh, man. Tell you what, if you and Micah ever got into a room together, you would never leave.
Oh, from Digital Eclipse? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeremy Williams is a friend of mine, and he worked for them for 5 years. He just left to pursue different opportunities, and he said the same thing. He's like, either I definitely need to get you in the same room with Mike, or I definitely need to keep you out of the same room as Mike.
Yeah, either way, I feel like a weird third wheel. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it, and it was kind of a scramble to get this all organized, but like I do love MobyGames. I love that it exists. I love the tool that it is. And it's just awesome. I use it all the time. You know, I used it recently. I just played through Promise Mascot Agency, and I looked it up and I was like, man, this game's great. And I know that the team made Paradise Killer before that. And I just needed to verify that all the people on that team were in fact British. And thanks to MobyGames, I was able to do that. So thank you for that. It's really a great service. So Jim, thank you for being a part of making it exist. And Tracy, thank you so much for continuing to work on it and the passion. This was awesome. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk. Tracy, let's start with you. Where can people find you if you want them to find you? There's no pressure if you don't have an online presence to be found.
I mostly do not. I'm on MobyGames.
Great.
They can join the MobyGames Discord. Talk to us there.
There you go. Join the MobyGames Discord. Talk to Tracy. Say hey. Say thank you for all the work he's doing behind the scenes. And Jim, how about yourself? I know you got something.
I'm on Blue Sky at oldschool.org, and I'm on YouTube at The Old School PC. And old school in those cases are OLDSKOOL, because I'm old.
Great. I'll have links to that below in the description, so you could clickety-clack your way to those and see what Jim is up to. As for myself, you can find me also on Blue Sky at Jays of Doom. And I always like seeing the comments below. Like I said, got a lot of good stuff coming your way. You have no idea. I also love seeing everybody speculate on this lost episode 53. You're all wrong. I'll just say that. I've seen every thought. I've seen every guess. You're wrong. You're all wrong. But it's still a fun episode. And there will be a lot more fun happening throughout the summer. Wink, wink. Gentlemen, thank you one more time. And for everybody else, thanks for listening. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks very much.